Hello and welcome to the Basic to Bold podcast. I'm your host, Jen Bjornson. Today we are going to talk about something that everybody deals with. And I mean everybody. There is not one single person on this planet that does not deal with this problem. And that is the war in your head of negative self-talk. Now, before I get down the rabbit hole, before we dive in, please, if this talk resonates with you, or if this, really speaks to you, or you think it could help somebody, please share it, whether it's on social media or in a text. Just help us get the word out, and I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so like I said, everybody deals with this, right? Everybody at some point. I don't care who they are. I don't care how successful. I don't care how famous. I don't care how much money they have. Everybody feels at some point they're not enough. They feel like they suck. They feel like, who do you think you are? I mean, all this stuff. Everything comes into people's heads. And because we all deal with it, the surprising thing is how many people, even though I think if we were to ask people, most people would say, oh, I think a lot of people feel this way. Maybe not, but I do. I think a lot of people would think, yeah, I think people feel this way. At the same time, it's so lonely. So when you're kind of in the middle of it, it's so lonely that you kind of think you're the only person. You kind of think you're the only person that's dealing with it. You kind of think you're a weirdo. You kind of think you're like, what's wrong with me? Which then just makes it so much worse, right? And it doesn't really make any sense, because when you're feeling good and when you're feeling okay about yourself, or you're in a good place, you can kind of tell that, other people have hard times. And so logically would say, yeah, I think a good majority of people feel that way. But when you're in it, and you're really in it, it feels so lonely that it's hard to just say, oh, everybody feels like this. It's okay. I mean, I know everybody has this feeling. And so it's really hard to make that. I don't know that it makes many people feel better. Sometimes it could. But it really is true. Everybody deals with it. Everybody at some point tells themselves they suck. Or who do you think you are? Or you're not doing enough. Or you're not smart enough. You're not handsome enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not whatever enough. And the crazy thing is, it tends to hit whenever you're trying to do something, right? Totally out of the blue. You're doing something or not doing something, but just at the same time, it's most random times, right? You're excited about something and you're like, I'm going to try this new thing. I'm going to start losing weight. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to write a book. And immediately these weird thoughts of, well, that's stupid. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you could do that? You can't do that. You're a loser. Well, you've tried before and you failed. And you're like, what is that? How does that help me at all? Well, it doesn't. But it hits at the most random, weird times, the most unhelpful times, first of all. And it's so annoying, right? So annoying, because all you're trying to do is you're like, just shut up. Let me just be happy, right? If that was somebody in your life and they just constantly, anytime, and I think there are people in life who are like this, where it didn't matter if you were saying something and you were like, oh, look at that. And they're like, well, and they just see the negative in everything. And they're just annoying with it. It's so annoying. But for some reason in our head, we're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Our head's right. Right? But if you had that person in your life, it's so annoying. Just let me have this. Who cares? Who cares that I'm going to be delusionally excited about this? Who cares? What is the harm in that? Okay, so I think we all know what I'm talking about, right? Those beliefs, because we've all had them. We've all had them. We all continue to have them. And I really wanted to talk about this because, number one, I dealt with it for years. And I listened to somebody else who's really big in the self-help world, self-help space, and I thought it was interesting, their take on it. I just found this really fascinating. That in their mind, that there was never, the negativity never went away, that it's never going to go away. And it made me think, because as a person who was so low, I physically couldn't do anything. And to have this person telling me, well, you always have that, it never goes away, and you just got to push through it and got to do things anyways. And I was looking back on my life, and I thought, there was a time I physically, mentally, everything could not push through it. I couldn't push through it. So then it got me thinking, okay, well, clearly I'm on the other side of it. So did I push through it? What happened? What's the difference? And so I want to speak on this topic as the person who, there was a time I could not push through it. There was no pushing through it. There wasn't just like, well, just get up by your bootstraps and just move forward. It was like, I physically cannot. I cannot push through this. And what the difference is, so how I got past that, first of all. But then what is the difference now? Because as he was talking, I'm like, that is kind of correct in a way, that I have accomplished a lot since I have fixed anxiety and gotten past it and depression, to where now, like, I do still have those thoughts, but they're not debilitating. So that's kind of what I want to talk about first, is I think there is negativity all around us all the time. That is a true statement. It is around us all the time. And I don't think you can get away from it. You cannot get away from the negativity that happens, and that continues to happen all around us. And there are people, and there are situations, and there are events that are constantly happening that are just an insane weight. And to just say you're going to positively walk through life with nothing affecting you, I think is unrealistic. At the same time, on the opposite side of that, to say you're always going to, so I hope I'm saying this correctly, and I'm making this under everybody understands. On one side, I do think there's positive toxic positivity. I mean, I know that's a thing, but where you just like, everything's going to be okay. But on the other side, there's this, nothing's going to be okay, right? Like, there's two very different extremes. One is doom and gloom. One is everything's rainbows and unicorns. And I don't think either side of that is healthy. Now, I would have to say, for the majority of my life, I was the doom and gloom person. In fact, I had a huge belief of life sucks and then you die. And I said that for years, probably decades. And surprising, I hated life. I think on the opposite side, the positivity, it's just unrealistic, because there are sad things. And I think that affects you in a different way. I think that trying to constantly be positive and nothing's wrong and everything's okay, I think you're just shoving stuff down to make it like, I can't handle the negative, and so I'm just going to shove it down. Don't look at it, right? I don't think that's healthy either. And I think there should be a healthy ebbs and flows of life is good or this is hard, but I'm going to get through it. So I think that is where I think the balance comes in. That's the goal, right? The goal is we're going to have good times, but when hard times hit, okay, all right, how do we get through this? How do we get past this in the fastest, quickest way possible, right? Because people do it. And I think that's the thing. When I look back and I was so extremely depressed and life sucked in, and then you die kind of mentality, I didn't know how to get past it. But one of the things I saw is I saw other people have a similar lifestyle like me, right? They had a certain number of kids. They had a certain lifestyle or life situations, and they weren't a train wreck. And I don't mean I was judging myself or comparing myself to them, like, look at them, they have it all together, you suck. No, I was looking at it like, clearly they are doing something, thinking something, they are behaving. There's something about them that they're living a very, very similar experience, and it's not killing them. It's not tearing them down. And in my head, that was so fascinating as to what they were doing or what they were thinking or what they were like. Was it a pill? Was it an herb? Was it an oil? Was it a workout regimen? What was it that made them have the same situation as me, but they seemed to be handling it fine? And that kind of mentality has always fascinated me. And I really believe that is what has gotten me through a ton of stuff. Because first, just having the curiosity, I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to fix my brain. I didn't know how to fix the way I was thinking. I didn't even know the way I was thinking was wrong. All I could see is there were people in similar situations. And I think you can either look at it like, well, they're lucky. Well, I'm sure they've got daddy's money. I'm sure it's easy for them. I think you can look at it as like they're lucky, or I think you can look at it as like, what are they doing? What's the difference? What's the difference between them and me? If they have 4 kids and I have 4 kids, what's the difference? Why are they having amazing family experiences and I'm over here having a hard time trying to do the normal living? What's the difference, right? And sometimes I found things that I was like, oh, they do have daddy's money. Like, sometimes I did see that. Sometimes I genuinely did. There was a couple of times where, so I had very little kids, and I know this is really, I'm talking about being a mom, but just that's what I'm going to talk about just from my experience, because this was a real big one for me. I had very, very little kids, like baby, 2 toddlers, and like a little kid, like, right, they were all scrunched together. And my husband was in the military. And I remember I would look around and I would see, okay, I feel like I'm falling apart. I don't know what my problem is, because I would look at another woman and I would see, okay, she has similar lifestyle, similar going on in as far as what her lifestyle and my lifestyle look like. They're very similar. And she is genuinely like very happy. She's put together. And I don't mean put together as like that's important. I mean like she seemed to be handling things the way I wanted to handle things. And I think that's really important, because that verbiage, it's not about that I wanted to look a certain way. It's I wanted to feel a certain way. When I woke up every day, I felt overwhelmed. I felt like a train wreck. I felt neurotic. And when there was certain people that I would see, it's not that I looked at them and thought, I wish I had that body, or I wish I had that hair, or I wish, oh, look at that cute lipstick. It wasn't that. It was, this woman appeared to be peaceful and joyful in her everyday life. It didn't have anything to do with the way she looked. It didn't have anything to do with the way she dressed. It had everything to do with the fact that she seemed at peace in her life, and that's what I wanted. That's what I was aiming for. And so then I looked at our lifestyles. And sometimes when I look at the lifestyle, I was like, you can't even compare those two, right? It's like, here, my husband's like deployed all the time. And I've got babies and toddlers and barely holding it together. And her husband was home at night, like by like 4 or 5 o'clock, helping her. And she was in, they had, and not that money fixes it, but she got to go off and have like a girls' night weekly. And then they'd have date night weekly, and they got a babysitter, and and not that that's bad. It just, that I couldn't compare that, because at the time my husband wasn't even in the country. So the idea of that wasn't comparable. But sometimes I would look at it and I thought, okay, this woman's in the exact same situation or very, very similar situation, and she's still at peace. She's still calm. You can definitely tell she's having ups and downs, but she's handling it well. And I don't feel like I'm handling it like that. So now looking at us, her and me together, what's the difference? And so that was a really important part, to start looking at people not in a judging way, not in a comparison where I suck and they've got it together, but what's the difference? Find the difference. So that was a big first step for me. And then it comes down to, okay, so you've got these battles and you're in your head and you're feeling one way, but you can look at these people and you're like, okay, they're clearly feeling another way. So now where do we go from there? Right? Like, what's the difference? Now, where do we go from there? And one of the things that it took was you have to try stuff. You got to kind of try some things. So I would definitely look at the woman who was like, she gets alone time. She is, and so I thought maybe that's what it is. Maybe you have to try things, and not just try things, but you have to be willing for things not to be okay. Not to be willing, or to be willing that they don't work, right? And so you see one woman who she's doing something and you try that. Like for me, I remember everybody for a while was scrapbooking. They're just scrapbookers. And everybody was getting cameras and starting their own photography business, and then they'd scrapbook. And there is nothing wrong with photography or scrapbooking. And I tried it. And I'm like, I got about 2 pictures in, and I thought, this is painful. I cannot physically sit here and spend an hour on one page, on one picture. Like that, just why? And so it's okay. It's okay. It's okay that I bought all the material and then never ever used it, other than to build this half a page, because I got into it and I just thought, I can't do this. This is so boring. So bless your hearts, those people who are crafty, because it's okay that didn't work for me. That's what works for some people. But you got to start trying things. You got to start figuring it out. Try the diets. Try the vegan and the carnivore. Like, I did it all, right? Try walking. Try meditating. Try, for me, what I talk about this frequently was hypnosis. And I still to this day, I find that is one of the biggest things that switches my mindset and switches my brain and turns off the negative noise. And then when I started to silence all of the negativity around me, that's when I could start curating and seeing the happiness. Because that's another big thing. You're not going to notice the happiness right away, because as you're changing things, it causes chaos. As you're shifting stuff, it causes the chaos around you. Now, not only do you got chaos going in your head, you kind of got, you're kind of causing it going around you, because you're trying to fix things and change things. And so you're like, I'm going to try scrapbooking. And so now it creates a mess over here. And that's okay. That's okay. Like allow some chaos to come out, because in order to change anything, you have to change things. You have to change things to change things. And so if you think you're just going to peacefully and calmly go from one chaos that's going on into negative self-talk and you're going to try these things to kind of have peace and joy in your life, and you're going to do that in a calm and peaceful way. No, there's a lot of stuff that there's going to be crying. There's going to be stuff that comes out because you're working through it, because it's been shoved in you and through, like just crammed in there so hard, and now it's got to come out. All of that, it's got to come out. The other thing that I think is really, really important to discuss, and that is, so many people, I think there's a lot of people that are really in the depths of sadness and even downright depression. But I think I know there's a lot of people that deal with that. At the same time, there's a difference between feeling depressed and sad because your life is depressing and sad, right? Like, and I hope this makes sense. So bear with me if you're like that, like you're not, this doesn't make any sense. There is a difference. I have seen that if you have never felt joy in your life compared to somebody who has felt joy and then gone into depression and then finding their way out again. Does that make the two? There's things I've noticed, two different types of real deep sadness. One is from a very, very young age, you've just always kind of grown up not feeling happy, not feeling joy, constantly in chaos, constantly being berated. And that's just kind of how you've grown up. And then there's a difference with you've had some happiness. You've had, you know what joy and peace and happiness feels like. And maybe you even do have a toxic and chaotic life, but you felt joy and happiness. And then things happen and you go into real deep sadness. The difference is, and I think this is really important, the difference is when you're getting out of those two, there's a difference between, hey, people who have had joy and happiness, they know what they're coming out of because they've had the joy and the happiness. So they know when they're in deep despair, they know what the opposite feels like. Whereas somebody who's kind of been in that their whole life, coming out of that is really unknown because they don't know you don't know what you're headed into. You don't know what you're heading towards. And people say, don't you want to have joy? Don't you want to have happiness? Don't you want to love your life? And you're going, yeah, because people talk about it and it sounds great, but at the same time, you don't really know what that means. And there's a very big difference. And it's very similar in negative self-talk. There are people, I truly have seen, there are people who are active and they can move forward, and then they hit something really, really big and they can't go forward anymore. Or they hit something really, really big and it's a huge struggle to move forward, but they can move forward. And then you have another group of people who are so low, who have just berated themselves so much that there's no willpowering their way through it. There's no, I'm just going to keep pushing forward and eventually this is going to happen. There's so much to willpower your way through that it's kind of unfair, because to just say, just set goals. No, we're not quite to goals yet. And that's, if you haven't guessed, that's the kind of people I'm talking to today, is the people who are super, super low. If you've had joy and you've had happiness and you kind of know what that feels like, or you know how to set a goal, maybe this will help you. And that's awesome. And we'd love you to stick around. But I'm more talking to the people who are so low and so deep that you've never known how to do it. So the first thing that I did, and I've talked about this quite a bit, is one of the first steps I ever did to get myself out of it was just so intentionally, so intently, like obsessively talking positive to myself, going, you're doing a great job, you're doing awesome. I don't care what it is. I don't care what it was. Being positive to myself, being positive about myself. You're doing a great job. This is perfect. This is great. Oh my gosh, like you're doing so great, right? Like even if I wouldn't get out of bed, like if I sat up, you're doing so good. Look at you. You sat up. Like, I know it sounds so ridiculous, but if you've been berating yourself and just criticizing yourself to no end, that's the first step. Okay. That's the absolute first step. And I would challenge anybody to like, that won't change your life in some way. If you intentionally keep doing it. Now I'll have to say it took me a little bit because easily your brain wants to be like, no, you're not, you suck, whatever. Right. Like that's kind of the first step. The next step that I did, and I've talked about this a lot, hypnosis, meditation, journaling, all the things. Let's get those emotions out. Get them out. I even have on here, I've talked about this, like I have self-love hypnosis. Get on there. It's totally free. It's teaching you how to love yourself. And you can sit there when you're going to sleep, and you can train your brain to love yourself, to let things go. Also, if you, on the flip side of congratulating yourself and being, your own cheerleader, gratitude. Now, I know we hear about this one a lot. And this is where I'll say, if you're super, super low and you are berating yourself, I find gratitude to be really, really hard. I just don't feel like it works until you get the congratulating yourself and celebrating yourself. When you get that figured out and you get that starting to where you start to feel like, okay, I am not this worthless person, then I feel like gratitude does an even better job. And I actually feel gratitude. Whereas before, I don't know, gratitude just kind of would make me feel worse, to be honest with you. Like it just, I don't know why, but it just kind of made me feel worse. So I made sure that, or when I'm talking to people, I make sure that they're really celebrating themselves. And then I talk about gratitude. Gratitude is so important. And now that I am like, feel good, now that I am to a level of that peace and joy and calm in my life, I love gratitude. I fully support gratitude. That's like the first place I go to. But in the beginning, when I was so low and I just like hated life, gratitude wasn't really helpful to me. And if it's helpful to you, if you're try both and you love gratitude, go for it. There's no wrong way to do this, which is that's really the key. There's no wrong way to do this. So if that's what you find, do that. I'm just telling you my experience. All right. The third thing that I started doing is really sitting in silence, taking those times. And I know sometimes it's super hard in life to find a moment. However, it's possible. I truly believe it's possible for everybody to find 10 minutes where you sit in silence. No phones, no TV, no electronics. Just sit in silence with your thoughts. Now, here's the other thing that I find. When you start doing this, that noise and that chatter is so insanely loud. It's obnoxious. It is painfully loud. And the thing that you want to start doing and get into a habit is challenging those thoughts. And maybe not so much challenging, maybe that's not a great word, but first of all, letting them out, like I said, to start really noticing them. But also, when you start sitting with them, they really start telling you what you're really thinking, right? So one thing I've noticed, and this is kind of universal across the board. It's true for me, and it's true for the majority of people I've come across. If you're angry, it's rarely anger, and 99.999% of the time it's hurt. And because I sat with so many things, and at first there was so much anger and rage, but then eventually the anger and rage, it didn't go away, but then it came out as hurt, and it came out as frustration or feeling abandoned, and that's where you really start to work through some stuff, because if you'll sit with it, if you'll really start to allow those things to come out and sit with it for a minute and really start to investigate it and stop pushing it away and stop, oh, this is uncomfortable, this is not okay, right? Sit with it and allow it to be uncomfortable and allow it to be that, and then also question it. See, that's an interesting comment I heard on a podcast, and I really liked it. And it said your first thought is typically what somebody else has told you to think, and your second comment is what your second thought is what you actually think. And I really feel that's very accurate, especially when you're sitting with things, because at first you have all this anger and you feel so much rage and you feel irritated and you feel frustrated. And if you go, why? Why do I feel this? Well, they did that. Well, they did this. Well, this happened. Okay. So why am I reacting in anger? Why does that affect me this way? Why? And just start saying why. I say why. I think more as an adult. I mean, I think I could challenge a toddler with how much I say why. And I ask other people, why? Well, why do you think that? Well, why would you put it that way? And when you start really digging deep into why, just why. And don't just take it as face value. That's the easy thing. Taking it as face value, I'm angry because they made me angry. And just being like, well, that's true. That's the easy part. That's the lazy person's way out. And accepting it that you're just true no matter what, that doesn't help anybody. All right. So one of the last things is all of these things that I've talked about, when you're extremely low, when you have insane negative self-talk, it does take a minute to get past the intensity and how intense it is. And to get to I hate the word normal, but I don't know a lesser, maybe lesser, instead of saying normal, a lesser. But it kind of comes back to like, there's always negative in the world. You're never going to get away from negative. At the same time, some of us are in a negative that's so low, we're absolutely not functioning. And that's not okay. That's where we can pull ourselves out. And I totally agree that negative's all around us and you can't stop the negative. I don't agree with that if you're so low that you can barely function in life or you're hating life, that's not okay. That can be worked on. That can be, quote unquote, air quotes, fixed. And the goal is to start building resistance to the negative. Now, one of the things I truly believe is some of us, we've had so much negative that we're just beaten down. We're just so beaten down. And so I don't want to put it out there that like, you just need to work harder, just suck it up. No, No, because some of us have been so beaten down that the idea of like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, willpower your way through, not a thing. Not a thing for some of us. For some of us. For some people, I totally watch them. They willpower their way through it. And I'm like, good for you. Like, congratulations, you have that skill set. That's amazing. And the next thing, I think I want that. I want to willpower my way through things. Right? It's that comparison. How do I get to that person? Rather than looking and be like, oh, they're just lucky. Oh, they can do it, but I can't. No, I look at them and go, I want that kind of resilience. So to get that type of resilience, here's what I've noticed. I wouldn't say I can totally willpower my way through everything at this point, but I can willpower my way through a lot more than I was able to. Because I'll tell you, when I started this journey, I couldn't willpower my way through anything. Nothing. I need to go get a glass of water. I was like, I don't have the energy for it. Right? Some of you out there get what I'm saying. Okay, so one of the ways that I'm speaking to people who are super low, and if you're super low, sometimes in order to build resistance, you got to give yourself a break. And what I mean by giving yourself a break, you have ripped yourselves to shreds for so long that even though you are quote unquote not accomplishing what you want, you're not where you want to be, you're not successful, whatever it is in your head, you have not given yourselves a mental break ever. The only mental break you get is maybe when you're sleeping, but let's face it, a good majority of us probably aren't sleeping very well. So even then you don't get a great night's sleep or you don't get rest from it. So I already talked about being really congratulating yourself. That's a major one. But some of us you just need a break. You got to stop. Sleep more. Tell yourself you're not accomplishing things today. You're not, and you're choosing to not accomplish things today. You're done accomplishing until you say you're going to accomplish. I have noticed with really high people, I'm going to say high achievers, but people who want to be high achievers. Because I would say that was me. I wouldn't call myself a high achiever. I would say I wanted to be a high achiever. I don't feel like I have to do this, but I would have to say I'm kind of one of those people that I get antsy. Like if I get to a mountaintop, I'll see another mountaintop. I'll be like, well, let's do that. It's just the way I'm wired. I don't know why some people are the way they are, especially that way. I don't know. But I'm finding it that I enjoy it more and more. I probably would have said I felt driven and maybe it was like an issue from my childhood, maybe. I don't think it's that way anymore, to be honest with you. I think it's just the way I'm wired. I find joy in it. I'm like, let's see what else we can do. I'm genuinely interested. So if this is you, your problem is not that you're not accomplishing enough. Your problem is you won't rest and you're exhausted. So I don't know if you need the permission. I don't know if you've never thought about it this way, but it's possible you're hating life and berating yourself because you're tired and you physically aren't used to resting. Your challenge is not the next challenge. Your challenge is to take a break. Your challenge is to actually rest. Your challenge is to rest and not tell yourself you suck. Your challenge is to get over the adrenal fatigue. Do you know how you get over adrenal fatigue? By resting, by not doing anything, by sleeping, by eating good food and not doing a thing and letting your adrenaline calm down and your adrenal glands to chill out. That's how you fix it. And right nutrition, but that's a whole other conversation. So just rest. This is so important. Calm down, rest. And working through, if you can't rest, that is something I would seriously sit with. What is the big deal? Why can you not rest? Why is resting causing you stress? That was my issue. I'd sit there and I'd be like, we need to do something. Should we go to the farmer's market? It's Saturday. what are we doing today? And it's like, why can't we just chill on Saturday? What's the big deal? What's the big deal with chilling? And like, I get it being productive. What is the big deal? Once in a while, once every 3 months, once every 6 months, you sit in front of the TV and you don't do anything with snacks and crappy food. And some of you are like, I do that. That's not a problem. Right. Do you do it though? And it's not a problem? Or do you do it and you sit and berate yourself that you should be doing something else? That's the difference. Sometimes building resilience is stopping and slowing down. And then after you've slowed down and you have the strength, go slow. Go so stinking slow. And if you think you're going slow, go slower. Because if you're going slow and you're still stressing, you're not going slow enough. Go slow. All right, I so appreciate you guys listening. And again, if this helps you in any way, I so appreciate you sharing it with people. And I'm kind of debating because I'm newer at this podcasting thing. And I've kind of been debating about how to end it. And I'm figuring stuff out myself. And sometimes, I don't know, I come across stuff and I really like this. So one of the things, I love quotes. I love them. They just make me happy. And I love the fact that they, I don't know, just every now and again, I come up with one, like a quote or a story. And I just love it. And so I've just decided now, if, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to end with a quote. Okay, so I love this one. And it says, mistakes are proof that you are trying. I love it. Mistakes are proof that you are trying. All right, I love you guys. Have an amazing day.